Hey guys, and welcome to Betwixt the Books. Sorry we had a weird hiatus there a little bit. Who knows? We did do last video was our reading roundtable, and like our schedule's like a little bit off because that got pushed a little bit. But we're back with a review. So there might be some videos kind of squashed and weirdly close together. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about the structure. We were never here for actual like sustainable, just you can definitely expect a video every 2 weeks. Never gonna happen that way ever. But we're here with a review for you guys of Really Cute People by Marcus Harwood-Jones. This is a poly romance, which you can maybe tell from the fact that there's 3 people on the cover instead of 2, and some crazy pets. Interesting for me that the child is not present on the cover because there is a child also in this relationship, which
And
I
I was
think,
very shocked.
yeah, I feel like should be known to people going into a romance because not everybody is going to want a romance that involves children. But poly romance, it's just a contemporary romance, normal, regular contemporary romance with the added element of it being queer and poly. So I'm gonna let Gretchen do like a better description of like the actual like plot of this because she's just better at that than I am.
Okay, we're gonna discuss this, but the plot of the book that is promised and the plot of the book that happens are two different things. And so I'm going to give you the setup that is basically what Michaela and I thought this was going to be going into it. So Charlie has been going through a really rough time in their life. They use they them pronouns, and they used to live in this wonderful like queer like collective house like with this some wonderful queer found family. And in the beginning of the book, you get like a flashback to when the landlord of that place was like it was technically rent controlled, but the landlord wanted to do renovations, so they were being kicked out. And the whole family was like, we can fight it, except for Charlie. And so they all kind of scatter to the wind because it wasn't a unanimous vote. And Charlie now apparently thinks that they have to pay for this sin of now being very alone. They work for a very, very crummy job that, well, it used to be a wonderful hotline for mental health, and now it's like being downsized and downgraded. AI has gotten involved, and there's a skeleton crew. It's nothing like its original vision. And Charlie is the assistant manager who is really kind of the interim manager, and their life is just on the rocks. And they get sent on a work trip using their own vacation hours to this tiny, tiny town. This all takes place in Canada, but this is like up in kind of more like a woodsy, like small town Canada situation. And they end up at this Airbnb, which is a spare room in the house of one of Charlie's great like art idols, Elizabeth, who goes by Buffy, and her husband Hayden, and their child who goes by Rainbow for most of the book.
Yes.
So I think we can call her Rainbow.
Yeah.
They allow her to choose her name as she sees fit. So, but I think we'll just call her Rainbow for the purposes of simplicity.
Yeah.
The biggest winter storm of all time kicks in, and so they are all trapped inside. And Charlie learns what it's like to be cared for, and very, very awkwardly ends up in a throuple eventually with Buffy and Hayden. Um, that feels more like the plot we were promised. We will discuss how that is not exactly what you get.
Yeah.
But that's the basics.
That's the pitch that was given to us. Yeah. Description. I told Gretchen when we were doing this that I was like looking at what other people were reviewing this as before we were coming to this because I just was interested to see what other people were saying, and that there was one person on Goodreads that rated it 4 stars, and then the first line of their review was like, I'm giving this 4 stars, but it's actually a 2.5 if this was just a straight book, because I want to support like what this book is doing, which is representing queer relationships, representing polyamorous relationships just as like a normal thing. One of the reasons that we picked this book up was because when we see poly relationships, most of the time it's in a dark romance, like some sort of kinky romance, or it's like a harem situation, which is usually kind of weird. And this was meant to just be like, this is like a normal couple or a normal throuple, like a normal way that a relationship can be multi-person in the real world. Like it's not always just a kink based thing. And like I was excited about that, and like this person that said that, I will probably be rating this on Storygraph higher than I actually think it is. Like real talk, probably like a 2.5. Probably going to land at a 3. I'm not sure that I'm comfortable saying 4 stars on something that I actively like didn't enjoy reading. Both Gretchen and I said that we probably would not have finished this book if we weren't going to review it. Not because it's like hard to read, but because it made me actually mad while I was starting the book. And when that happens, I tend to just be like, I'm not gonna finish the book. Like I was huffing, like it was making me angry. And we'll talk about some of the reasons for that as we go into the review. But yeah, probably like 2.5 stars, real talk, but gonna show 3 on Storygraph, probably.
Yeah. Yes, my Storygraph already shows 3. I agree that that is more of a 2.5 for me. Probably closer to a 2.
Yeah.
Because I was just like so actively annoyed at so many points. I at one point texted Michaela in all caps, I am so annoyed.
Yep.
So that for me, and it was really frustrating because both of us really, really wanted to like this book. We wanted to be able to support this book and say really awesome things. Michaela does not often, unless I make her read like regular contemporary romances, right, that aren't like fantasy or have something else going on. Whereas I love them. I love reading them. They're probably my preferred genre of romance just at this point. And we both have the same opinion. So also let it be known that there's also just like that when you normally see both of us reviewing like fantasy romances, there are reasons for that, but it's not constructed well is a very, I think, fair way to explain this book because it has a lot of elements that could have worked. They were not put together in the right way. And they were put together in a way that I think actively, like, I don't want to say made you root against them, but like actively makes you question like how solid this throuple is. And if you're looking at it as something that you want it to be good representation, that's really upsetting. So yeah, not great.
No. There's a TikTok book reviewer that I watch that at the end of all of her romance reviews, she has like a board with like a tier rating list on whether or not she thinks that they're gonna like last forever or like they're gonna get divorced or whatever. And this definitely feels like it's like a temporary, like not like couple goals. Like it's at the bottom of the list of like, it's working right now, but I don't know how long that's gonna keep maintaining it. Yeah, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about why we feel like that is the case as we go into this. So yeah, if you haven't read it and you're interested in it, not gonna say like don't read it, but it's definitely not one that we would like recommend to people. We're not gonna like be like, oh, you know this book that I just read? Here you go. Like, it's not gonna happen. Not probably not. If somebody is asking for poly romance, even I would probably lean them towards some of like Katie Roberts stuff because while we haven't loved all of the poly romances that she has put out, there's definitely better representation there. I feel like even though it is kind of in not quite as normal of a situation, like I want to have a contemporary poly romance that I can hand to somebody.
This retelling of the Greek myths in a fantasy world is not normal?
It's not for everybody, just definitely not for everybody. You know.
Yeah, so okay, so let's just like explain the major problem here.
Yeah.
Okay. So from the pitch, you kind of assume that, okay, you understand this thing, this like sad thing has happened, and maybe that's it's how the book opens, and you're like, oh, that was really sad. Um, to have thought that you had this family that had your back, and only to find out that, like, you've all crumbled, and that's very sad. But now we're gonna like go into this rom-com romance. Not every moment of every romance novel is happy, right? They don't all have to be. They just have to have a happy ending. Um, but the start of this book is sad. Charlie is wallowing in self-pity. It is like everything is just gray. It's very sad. And there is a significant amount of time in this book before it even introduces the characters that Charlie is going to be in a relationship with, where it continuously flashes back to times at this house. It's called Hillside House. And doing an exceptional amount of character work for characters that never actually appear in the like now story. And because there was like 5 or 6 people living at this house, there are all these names thrown around and all this stuff. And I was genuinely like, okay, is part of this going to be that the gang's going to come back together? Because it was taking so much time with all of these. They don't. There is one character from that house that Charlie is still in contact with, and they come in and out. No one else matters. And so for Charlie to spend all of this time thinking about this, and for the book to spend so much page time talking about these people, and again, it's sad because these people, Charlie feels like they let them down, and then it's like, and Mako, the one person that Charlie is still in contact with, is like, there was some stuff going on that maybe you didn't know about, and it takes so long. And then when Charlie finally goes on this business trip and is in the house, it is also long and awkward. And we're going to get into this a little bit more, so I don't really want to, really get hard into this, but like, and then at 60%, and I clocked this, it's 60 to 61% exactly in my ebook, the book remembers that it is a romantic comedy. And the romantic content and the like happy content go from, it's not even like 0 to 60, it's like 0 to 200. Right? And it's just like, and there has been very little relationship build up for this. There has been very little character build up for this. The book is entirely from Charlie's point of view. And it's just like, what?
Yeah.
And now we're expected to watch like this poly relationship. And again, Hayden and Buffy, these 2 people that Charlie will end up in a relationship with, have been married, have a kid. They have an exceptional amount of life together that they've been committed. And so again, for Charlie to just kind of parachute in and things to kind of just go, wah! We'll talk about this more, but it's just like the book gives you whiplash at 61% of the way in, and it's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah. One of the things that I wound up doing, I started reading it physically, was getting mad at it, switched to the audiobook because it kind of forced me to keep, because I kept putting it down because I was like, I'm mad and I don't want to do this. So it was forcing me to continue with it. It's because I'm listening to it in the audiobook. And my partner Isaac was listening with me. And I kept complaining. So I was talking to him about it. And then I talked with Gretchen about this too, which is that at the beginning of this book, Charlie is not ready for a relationship with one other person, let alone 2 other people. Charlie is still beating themselves up. They don't know what they're doing with their life. Like they don't seem to have any sort of self-motivation or direction. And I'm one of those people who feels like when you have a romance book and the thing that they're missing is other people, like that's not healthy. Like you need to be in a healthy spot for yourself, or at least know who you are. Like know what you're doing, what you want in life, where you're going. You need to be in a stable place yourself before you can entertain the idea of like adding an extra person into the mix. And that is not what Charlie is doing at this point in their life. They are kind of just going with whatever's being thrown at them and wallowing in like every single decision they've ever made is the worst thing they could have possibly made. This decision and was the wrong one every single time. And I'm like, how am I supposed to believe that this person is ready to be in a relationship, let alone a relationship with multiple people? And when they do finally start interacting with these other people, it was in a way that didn't feel believable to me for a healthy polyromance to start. I gave the example like pretty early on, one of the first interactions that Charlie has with Hayden. Hayden's going to order a pizza for them all to have at night because Charlie showed up a day earlier than they expected at the house. They were going to leave so that Charlie could have the whole house, but things happened, obviously, situations, whatever. The thing that Hayden asks is, what toppings do you want on your pizza? And then there's this weird internal monologue thing that Charlie has where they're like, we're having a moment, like we're flirting right now. And at this point, all that Charlie knows is that this is a person in a committed relationship with a child who has just done like the bare minimum of being nice, of just asking if they want what they like on their pizza, which is just like a normal human interaction. And that doesn't feel, that's not flirting. Like I don't flirt with people asking them what their pizza toppings are. That's just like normal niceness. Like I don't know how to, so like it felt weird and I was frustrated and I was like, is it this because I personally am demi and I don't like find people hot? So like is it just like a lust thing? But it seemed like it was trying to be like, this is a moment. Like we are sharing this like weird sexual tension. And I'm like, this isn't a sexual moment. What are you talking about? And a person who does that about people who are in a committed relationship as far as they could tell, I don't feel like is a good person to have in a poly romance because it's so much about consent and communication. Like if you're just flirting with random people who, for all you know, aren't even interested in being flirted with, that makes me uncomfortable as a person. And that's the person that Charlie is at the beginning of this book. And I'm like, this is where this relationship is starting. This isn't gonna go well. It's not good. Not good.
When it goes into, I think also how like Charlie is really the only character that we ever really get much of anything about because again the book spends so much time trying to establish all of the people who used to live at Hillside House who don't matter anymore. And then there is Hayden and Buffy, their child Rainbow, like their friend Francis, and then there's some like they at one point they go to the inclusive church that they attend services at, and there's like a whole bunch of people who were introduced there. And it's just very two-dimensional characterization, really, for most of it. Except for Charlie, whose main characterization seems to be that they do not know how to accept love and are not used to being cared for. And I think that goes into what Michaela was just talking about because all Buffy and Hayden are really doing in this beginning is like having a normal amount of human care for this person who is, I assume, paying to like have this room in their house because they're really nice people. And like multiple things where like Charlie is like, are we having a moment? And they're just being nice.
Bare minimum, yeah.
And so talk about not being ready for a relationship and a weird foundation for a relationship. Also for me, just I mean, I identify as straight for the most part, and it's just like I don't. Why are you having lusty feelings? Like I don't. And then I just felt really uncomfortable because you know it's a romance novel and you know this path that they're headed down, and it's just like, oh no, 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 no. Like Charlie is still working on being cared for. And so because there's just like so other, like little other characterization ever, it's very confusing. And I think Michaela is going to talk about this a little bit more, but like also the only thing that we know about Hayden is that he's really, really trying really hard to both get a tenure track position, care for his daughter, and keep his wife sane. And Buffy is just like constantly on the edge of burnout.
Yes.
And so the things that like Charlie's like, oh, I fit in here are helping with labor, not relationship, which is fine
Yeah.
if it wasn't a romance novel.
It's one of those things where it's like kind of a joke, but the tagline for being in a poly relationship is monogamous in this economy. Like, ha ha ha, like it's impossible to do all the things that is expected of two adults when both of you are trying to have careers and keep a home and raise children. Like it's like you can't physically do all that with only two people, and you need an extra person in your life to like help with that. And I am one of those people that like gets bothered when all of the characters' problems magically disappear when they meet their partner, and that doesn't come out of like it doesn't go away just because now there's three people instead of two. And that does sort of seem like that's like, oh, we just needed to add Charlie into our marriage and now all of our marriage problems are gone. Because it's taken stuff off of our plates that we were having trouble juggling, and now everything is smooth sailing. And bonus, we get a hot they them to have sex with. like that's what it feels like. And I think that's what we mean when we say that this relationship doesn't feel sustainable. It's that the person that's being added into this long-term committed relationship is sort of just there because they're being treated like a human being for the first time. Like it doesn't even feel like they have like that much of a connection with these other two characters. It just feels like they're being shown kindness for the first time in their life, and they're like reacting to that as if like this is the be all end all of human, like my one true love, a person that asked me what pizza toppings I want. like, like that's what it doesn't feel genuine. It feels very insta love, even though there isn't like it's weird. And maybe it is because they spent so much time at the beginning of the book, like talking about their past and not developing a relationship. And maybe it is because they already had like a weird crush on Buffy before going into this, which we haven't even touched on. There was like a weird power dynamic thing because Buffy is
Oh,
like kind of
yeah.
their idol, which is really weird to enter a relationship with someone that you idolize to that degree. Like that is weird. Not even going to really touch on that. But even from Hayden and Buffy's perspective, it's they both obviously are attracted to Charlie, but it feels like what they get out of the relationship is just like, oh, now I have a maid and childcare, and I can kind of focus on the things that I really care about, which is my career or my art or whatever it is, the things that they want to be doing. They're just sort of outsourcing all of the parts of their relationship that were too hard for them and dumping it on Charlie. But because they're giving Charlie the bare minimum of kindness, it's fine because Charlie's getting what Charlie wants. And that doesn't feel like a good basis for a sustainable relationship moving forward. Like add one fight in there and the whole thing falls apart, you know? I don't know. It doesn't I feel like when you read to the end of a romance book, you want to be like, yes, these two people or three people in this case really like they support each other, they have negative traits, but the other people are able to do that. And I talked about this where I felt like that's like the beauty of a poly relationship. What I think in one of the reviews of the Katie Roberts books is that it is better when you have more people you can rely on because you're no longer dumping all of your emotional needs on one person. And most people get those other emotional needs met through friendships or family relationships. But for some people, like Charlie, who don't have those stable relationships, having multiple partners could be helpful in that situation because the negative like emotions aren't constantly being dumped on one person. You can sort of like spread this around and get help and different points of view and sort of things coming from different people. And again, like sometimes you need some extra help in the home. Sometimes it is impossible to have two people who have really like time consuming and just mental capacity consuming jobs. Like sometimes you need a maid or a childcare, and sometimes that's your partner and sometimes it's not. Like that's okay. It just by the end of this book, I didn't feel like these were three people who were in love with each other. I just felt like it was three people who found each other attractive, who were like mildly benefited by being in a relationship together.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel sustainable.
And I'm glad you brought up like I mean we both did the Katie Roberts books as well. And if you just take the Dark Olympus series, there's been multiple thruples and also a like there's four of
Polycule.
them, but yeah,
Polycule.
they're not all dating each other, right?
Yeah.
And so how well or how not well the lead up to those relationships are, I always feel like even when they all slot in, right? And they all slot into their place, and each of them has like a role or a job, but they also have like a it's not just physical. There's also like an emotional role or a job, right? That they fulfill that like is, and you see it. I feel like she does such a good job in showing you how they click on multiple levels.
Yes.
And that was totally missing from the end of this. It was just like, all right, I get like physically everybody's job now.
Yeah.
Mostly Charlie. And I do think that part of Charlie's like willingness to do a whole bunch of labor is also because Buffy has not been making art. And Charlie has a huge like hero worship of Buffy as a performance artist. And it's probably like, yes, let me take this on so you could make art again. And I'm like, it is weird.
Yeah.
Is weird.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just felt very, again, from the point of view of me as a reader wanting to go into this and seeing like I mean, and again, it doesn't have to be like written well, right? But like you want healthy representation.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And this just did not feel like it.
No. I agree with that. So, do we want more poly romances? Yes. Do we want more poly contemporary romances? Yes. Do we think that that can be done well? Yes. Was this any of that? Not really. Not one that we recommend really for others to pick up, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean that we're against any of the things that it stood for. I do think that there's some positives to it, at least in that, you know, we're seeing more queer books getting published in adult romance and not just in YA. We're seeing more different types of queer relationships showing up in books too. Like it's not just gay relationships or lesbian relationships. There's trans characters in here. There's non-binary characters in here. It's cool to see more poly stuff showing up. So we stand behind what it's trying to do. We just don't feel like it was successful in doing it. You know? Yeah. Sad. Anyway, yeah, those are our thoughts on really cute people. And I think next time we're going to be talking about a lesbian road trip book. So that'll be exciting.
Yes. So I was looking it back up because I think when I quoted this in our reading roundtable, I got the quote wrong. And so I was like, I'm gonna get it right this time. So a couple of things that we have coming up outside of if maybe Michaela and I make solo content, we don't know. Do you expect that from us? Rude. Anyway, we do have another arc review of Here We Go Again by Allison Cochran. This is a lesbian romance between two women who were friends, then rivals in high school, and they're now in their 30s and are being dragged back together again. So it's like a little bit like, you know, enemies to lovers / you know, second chance. But they come back together because a beloved former English teacher and lifelong mentor is dying, and he wants to go on a road trip. So the tagline on the end of this, which I'm reading now because it's amazing: stuff into the gayest van west of the Mississippi. The three embark on a life-changing summer trip that will chart a new future and perhaps lead them back to one another. I am a huge fan of like second chancey romances. I love when they have a history and then they've like grown up and then they're coming back. It's like a very rich type of romance for me that has a little bit more than like, I saw you from across the room and thought you were hot. Which does not really do it for me.
Yeah.
So that will be up next for us. And then also coming up in April, we have another reading roundtable episode This one is not going to be themed. It's just going to be whatever everyone is reading, which we haven't done in a while. I'm really excited about that because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
We have 2 guests signed up for that. One that you have seen before on our channel in a reading roundtable, and one that you have never seen before in a reading roundtable, but you have heard us talk a lot about probably, which is Josh from the Literary Gladiators channel. Josh has been a huge supporter of ours, and we are so happy to have him on his first reading roundtable with us and Erica. And this is very reciprocal because we also just appeared on Josh's channel. Josh and the Literary Gladiators channel did a alphabet read, and so different people took a different letter of the alphabet, and everyone had to read a book that started with that letter. We got tea, and after some incredible trial and error, we ended up reading Tread of Angels by Rebecca Rowanhorse, which is a novella of what Michaela lovingly called Bible fan fiction. It was quite good, but we also had some pretty significant thoughts. So you can also head over to that channel if you want some bonus Betwixt the Books content. Hopefully that will tide you over until we can drive along on the gayest van west of Mississippi, and we'll see you for that.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Bye.